Sometimes we did. I can't do that anymore.
They were the voices that defined a generation. Names like Joe Walsh and Randy Meisner were etched into the very fabric of rock history. Legends who once stood shoulder to shoulder on stage, creating melodies that echoed across the world. But behind the harmonies, behind the fame, there was a story the spotlight never told. Confessions, betrayals, heartbreaks that shook the very foundation of the Eagles. This is not the story you thought you knew. Once you see the truth, the band you admired will never look the same again. Randy Meisner was born on March 8, 1946, in the small town of Scottsbluff, Nebraska, to a farming family of German descent. Herman and Emily Meisner spent their lives working the soil, growing corn, beans, and sugar beets, struggling to make ends meet for their 2 children. There were no stages, no bright lights, only the endless horizon of fields and the whispering winds of the prairie. From an early age, Randy's escape came in the form of music. His mother's lullabies, soft and tender, filled the quiet evenings, while his grandfather, George Hahn, offered him violin lessons that awakened a love for melodies that felt larger than the world he knew. At the age of 10, a single television appearance would alter the course of his life forever. Watching Elvis Presley on The Ed Sullivan Show, Randy felt something stir deep inside him, a realization that even an ordinary boy from Nebraska could achieve something extraordinary. Elvis made me believe that an ordinary person could accomplish something extraordinary, Meisner would later confess. Inspired and determined, he picked up the family's old guitar, learning each chord with painstaking care. The strings became an outlet for his longing, a voice for the dreams he carried. Silently, over time, he gravitated toward the bass, fascinated by the resonant tones of James Jamerson and other Motown greats. These sounds would shape his signature style, a foundation for the music he was yet to create. By the age of 15, Meisner had joined his first band, the Drive-In Dynamics, a small rockabilly group performing at Midwest weddings and tiny halls. Together, they released an EP titled So Fine, a modest yet meaningful achievement for a teenage boy who had spent his life chasing dreams across a vast, lonely prairie. But the reality was harsh. Money was always scarce, equipment was poor, and even within his own family, there were doubts about whether music could ever be more than a passing hobby. Every performance, every rehearsal felt like a battle for survival, a fight to claim the right to exist as a musician. In 1966, driven by ambition and the need to escape the monotony of Nebraska, Meisner moved to Los Angeles, joining a struggling band called The Poor. The band's name, uncomfortably accurate, mirrored their lives. Cramped apartments, nights on instant noodles, and performances in cheap bars just to scrape together enough money for rent. We lived as if each day was our last because, honestly, no one knew if we'd have enough money for food the next day, Meisner recalled. Despite releasing singles such as Can't Stand to Be in Love with You, recognition remained elusive. Every small victory seemed to be shadowed by a harsher reality, the relentless uncertainty of life in the music industry. Then, in 1968, it seemed fortune might finally smile. Meisner was invited to join Poco, a new band formed by Richie Furay and Jim Messina after the breakup of Buffalo Springfield. Poco was brimming with potential, a group destined to define the emerging country rock genre. Meisner, full of hope, contributed bass lines and backing vocals for their debut album, Picking Up the Pieces. But just as the promise of success seemed within reach, disaster struck. Richie Furay and Jim Messina, fearing that Meisner's vision would clash with the band's direction, barred him from attending the final mixing sessions. Worse still, his image on the album cover was replaced with a dog. The incident was not just humiliating, it was a brutal lesson from an industry that could be as cruel as it was glamorous. That was the first time I realized I was just a pawn, something that could be swept off the board at any moment, Meisner confessed in later interviews. The episode left a deep psychological scar, feelings of betrayal and exclusion that would haunt him for years. Yet, even in the face of such rejection, Meisner refused to surrender. Returning to Nebraska, he sought to rebuild himself. By day, he worked at a John Deere dealership. By night, he played music with a local band called Gold Rush. In those hours spent performing in dimly lit venues, Randy clung to hope, believing that one day another chance would come, a chance that could finally change his life. That opportunity arrived in 1971. Randy Meisner joined the Eagles, a band that would become one of the most iconic in rock history. With his harmonies and bass lines, he helped shape the sound that would define a generation. But the road ahead was far from smooth. Behind the public image of camaraderie and musical brilliance, tensions simmered, conflicts that would later erupt into personal and professional drama. Life in the Eagles was a whirlwind of touring, recording, and unprecedented success. Yet Meisner, ever the perfectionist, often felt the weight of internal discord, the pressures of fame combined with the complex personalities within the band created a fragile harmony where one wrong note could ignite lasting tension. Joe Walsh, another key figure in the band, shared moments of brilliance on stage with Meisner. But off stage, the story was often very different. Through it all, Meisner remained dedicated to his craft, a quiet force in a band that often demanded louder personalities. He wrote, performed, and harmonized, his contributions helping the Eagles achieve hits that would be sung for decades. And yet, the shadows of past betrayals, the Poco incident, the struggles in Los Angeles, the endless nights in small towns, lingered. In his mind, a reminder that fame was fragile, and loyalty even more so. As the years progressed, the pressures of life on the road began to take their toll. Emotional and physical exhaustion, compounded by personal conflicts, led to moments of tension that became legendary. Stories of sudden departures, heated arguments, and heartfelt confessions emerged, revealing that the life of a rock star was far from the glamorous image projected on album covers. Meisner's story was one of both triumph and tragedy, a delicate balance between the ecstasy of success and the agony of personal struggle. And yet, despite every setback, every betrayal, every heartbreak, Meisner's legacy endures. His voice, his bass lines, his presence in the Eagles helped shape a sound that defined an era. But the truth behind the stage lights, the fights, the betrayals, the sacrifices, remains a story that few ever knew. What happened behind the scenes was as dramatic, as painful, and as human as the songs themselves. The story of Randy Meisner and the Eagles is a testament to resilience, ambition, and the price of greatness. It is a story of a boy from Nebraska who dared to dream, who faced humiliation and rejection, yet refused to let those experiences define him. It is the story of music, of fame, and of the human heart's capacity to endure, even when life's stage seems impossibly cruel. And as we look back at the harmonies, the concerts, the history of the Eagles, remember this. Behind every note, behind every song, there was a story, sometimes dark, sometimes painful, but always real. A story of dreams chased, of battles fought, and of a man who never gave up, even when the world tried to sweep him aside. This is the legacy of Randy Meisner. Not just the music, not just the fame, but the heart, the struggle, and the unbroken spirit of a true rock legend. And once you know his story, you will never hear the Eagles the same way again. The life of a rock star is often glamorous on stage, but behind the bright lights, the cost is immeasurable. For Randy Meisner, the road with the Eagles was both exhilarating and exhausting. Endless tours, recording sessions, and public appearances blurred into one another, a whirlwind of applause and flashing cameras. Yet the closer he got to the spotlight, the heavier the private toll became. Homesickness, personal sacrifices, and the relentless pressure to maintain perfection haunted him. Every concert, every cheer from the crowd was a reminder that his life had changed forever, but not always for the better. Hey. The band's internal dynamics were fraught with tension. Creative disagreements between Meisner, Joe Walsh, Don Henley, and other members often turned rehearsals into battlegrounds. Every note, every harmony was debated, contested, and sometimes rejected. Randy, sensitive and principled, found himself at the center of conflicts that tested his loyalty and patience. Even moments of triumph were tinged with anxiety. The very people he shared the stage with could become his adversaries off it. Behind the music, Meisner's personal life was quietly unraveling. The constant travel and demands of fame strained relationships with family, friends, and loved ones. The boy from Nebraska, who once found solace in his mother's lullabies and the winds of the prairie, now struggled to find peace in a world dominated by contracts, schedules, and egos. He began to feel the emotional weight of his career in ways he had never anticipated. I realized I could give everything to music, but sometimes it would cost my soul, he would later reflect, the words heavy with the burden of experience. The tipping point came gradually. As the band's fame grew, so did the pressure and conflicts. Randy found himself increasingly isolated, the once tight-knit camaraderie of the Eagles giving way to disputes, frustrations, and silent resentments. Small disagreements over music or direction would flare into larger arguments, leaving scars that were invisible to fans but deeply felt by those involved. Despite the glitz, the golden albums, and the roar of audiences, a silent storm was brewing behind the scenes. Finally, in a moment that shook fans and bandmates alike, Meisner made the difficult decision to leave the Eagles. The departure was not abrupt. It was the culmination of years of emotional strain, creative clashes, and personal reflection. While the public saw headlines and speculated endlessly, the truth was far more complex. Randy's decision was as much about reclaiming his peace and integrity as it was about stepping away from a situation that had become unsustainable. The farewell was bittersweet. Applause and tears marked the end of an era, a final acknowledgement of the contributions of a man who had helped define the sound of a generation. Life after the Eagles brought a new chapter. Meisner returned to music. On his own terms, exploring solo projects, collaborating with other artists, and performing in smaller, more intimate venues. Away from the pressures of superstardom, he rediscovered the pure joy of playing music. Nights spent in rehearsal rooms and studios reminded him of why he had started this journey in the first place: the love of music, the thrill of creation, the resonance of a note perfectly played. Through it all, Randy Meisner's legacy endured. His voice, his bass lines, his harmonies, sometimes overshadowed by louder personalities, remained an indelible part of the Eagles' story. Younger musicians looked to him as a guide, a model of dedication, perseverance, and artistry. Fans, both old and new, continued to celebrate his work, recognizing the subtle genius he brought to each performance, each recording. In the end, Randy Meisner's story is not just about fame or success. It is a testament to resilience, to the pursuit of dreams against all odds, and to the human heart's capacity to endure. From the fields of Nebraska to sold-out arenas, from humble beginnings to world stages, he remained true to the music that had once lit his imagination as a child. The lessons of loyalty, heartbreak, struggle, and triumph echo not just in his songs, but in the hearts of those who followed his journey. And as the final chords fade, as the applause dies down, one thing becomes clear. Behind every note and harmony, behind every performance, there was a story of courage, perseverance, and unwavering passion. Randy Meisner's life reminds us that greatness is rarely easy, that success is often painful, and that the most extraordinary music is born from the most human struggles. This is the legacy of Randy Meisner, not just a member of the Eagles, not just a musician, but a man whose life and art continue to inspire. A story of dreams, of heartbreak, of battles fought in silence, and of a spirit that refused to break. And once you understand his journey, you will never hear the Eagles the same way again. Even after leaving the Eagles, Randy Meisner's story was far from over. Rumors of reunions circulated in the media, fans eagerly speculating if the original lineup would ever share the stage again. For Randy, these talks were a mixture of nostalgia and caution. He looked back at the glory days, with a fondness that was tinged with the bitterness of old conflicts. The music remained the same, but the relationships were fragile, tested by years of tension and unspoken grievances. "Sometimes I wondered if we could ever recreate the magic," he admitted. But the wounds from the past didn't always allow it. In the years that followed, Randy embraced his solo career with renewed passion. Free from the pressures and compromises of the band, he explored music on his own terms. Albums and live shows reflected his personal journey, every note and lyric infused with lessons learned from struggle, success, and heartbreak. Fans who had followed him from his Eagles days recognized the subtle genius that he brought to every performance. Even in smaller venues, there was a power and authenticity that could captivate an audience just as deeply as a stadium full of cheering fans. Behind the scenes, the drama continued in whispers and confessions. Stories of conflicts with bandmates, heated arguments on tour, and moments of betrayal painted a picture that contrasted sharply with the public's perception of seamless harmony. Randy was candid about the difficulties. It wasn't always about the music, he reflected. Sometimes it was about egos, misunderstandings, and the loneliness of living life on the road. The world saw the applause and the fame, but the private battles, emotional, psychological, and sometimes physical, were invisible to the audience, leaving scars that even success could not erase. Through it all, Randy remained devoted to his personal life. Relationships with family and close friends became his anchor in a life often swept up in chaos. Balancing fame with intimacy was a constant struggle, but the moments he could spend with loved ones reminded him of the simpler joys that first inspired him to pick up a guitar in Nebraska. These quiet reflections, away from the stage lights and screaming fans, revealed the man behind the music, a devoted father, a loyal friend, and a soul that carried the weight of dreams both realized and deferred. As the years progressed, Randy found a quieter rhythm. Mentoring younger musicians, revisiting his earlier compositions, and occasionally stepping on stage for select performances allowed him to reconnect with the passion that had first driven him. Each chord, each harmony, was a reminder that music was not merely a career, it was a lifeline, a bridge between his past struggles and his present reflections. In the end, Randy Meisner's legacy is profound. His influence on the Eagles, on rock and country rock, and on the countless musicians who followed him is undeniable. While his name may have sometimes been overshadowed by louder personalities, his contributions were foundational, a quiet strength that held melodies together and gave the band its signature sound. His story of perseverance, heartbreak, triumph, and resilience remains an inspiration, a testament to the enduring power of music and the human spirit. Randy Meisner's life reminds us that behind every song, every harmony, there is a journey filled with struggle, sacrifice, and unyielding determination. From the windswept fields of Nebraska to the world's largest stages, from small-town dreams to global fame, he remained true to the music that had first lit his imagination as a child. Every note he played, every lyric he sang, carries the echo of a life fully lived, a story of courage and passion that will resonate for generations. and as the final chords linger in the air, the applause dies down, and the lights fade. One thing is certain. Randy Meisner was more than a member of the Eagles, more than a bass player, more than a voice in harmony. He was a living testament to the power of dreams, the price of greatness, and the enduring spirit of a true rock legend. And once you know his journey, you will never hear the Eagles or their music the same way again.